Welcome back to the 2023 verdict. We're coming to you live from Channels Television. We're joined, as you've seen there in that welcoming slide, by Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
What a time that we're in. Looking through all the dailies, many are asking, well, where is the law? What is the position? Is the law respect of persons, institutions? We're talking about the Naira here, and we just seem to have a situation on our hands. We know that the Supreme Court at the moment is saying, okay, everybody hold on until we look at this matter. Isn't that supposed to, maybe you'll explain to us, should people be rejecting the old Naira note as today, as is happening in several places in this country?
Well, in a country where the rule of law operates, once the Supreme Court has determined a matter or given an order, it is expected that all and sundry, everybody, will comply with the order. In this instance, the government was not really ready to comply with the order. The Supreme Court, the central bank, the statement was credited to the central bank. And since it was not a party to the case, it's not going to comply with the order. I thought that could only happen in a banana republic. I was even compared to issue a statement that all agencies of the government, including the central bank, were banned by the orders of the Supreme Court. But here we are. Here we are. Because you would have expected the central bank to have issued a statement following the order of the Supreme Court. All actions are stayed until the 15th of February.
What can there be consequences for this in terms of how do the courts respond to this kind of scenario?
I think the plaintiffs will have to take it up in the court because when a court in Abuja granted an order that Mr. Godwin Emefiele be not arrested, he wasn't a party to the case. When he ran to use some proxies to file an action against the Central Bank Board in Delta State, preventing the bank from moving against him for participating in politics, he wasn't a party. So people cannot choose and pick which orders of court to obey.
I know that they released a statement. I'm trying to open that particular statement now. Shortly after that, this statement is signed the 10th of February, 2023. It only talks about CBN debunking false claims about capacity of NSPMC, alleged threats to close some deposit money banks. So they issued a statement saying that at no time did the CBN governor disclose that the current challenge in the distribution of newly redesigned Naira banknotes is owing to a shortage of printing materials at the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company. And then I think they also clarified where they said something about banks. Yes, the CBN therefore wishes to appeal to the public to disregard the said report and exercise more restraint. And they also talked about a social media report alleging that the CBN planned to shut down some banks, in a particular geopolitical region of the country. So there's been some communication from the CBN. I don't know whether this for you
to comply with the order of the Supreme Court. No,
this is the statement that they issued.
And that's on the 10th.
Yeah, on the 10th of 4 days ago.
Yeah, after the order of the Supreme Court had been granted.
Yes.
2 days earlier. Nothing directing the bank, no statement directing the bank to comply with the judgment. Yeah.
Should they do that?
And in any case, whether the central bank denies or not, the mint and print company is not in a position to produce and flood the markets with money. If they say, oh, we deny this statement, what has happened now? Where is the money?
I'm just a little curious here because this is one statement that they have released,
yeah.
But at the same time, some people will say, you have said that there is no way the CBN will say that it is not aware, even though it was not joined. But some people will say, and at this, I think that this perhaps falls back to lawyers, because the legal opinion said that the Supreme Court does not have jurisdiction over, it's not a matter of joining, it's over jurisdiction on monetary policy or even the CBN itself. I don't know, you shed a little light.
Unless you are calling for anarchy, no lawyer can sit down in his office or in the comfort of his room and say the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction. Once the court has assumed jurisdiction, rightly or wrongly, and has proceeded to grant an order, no lawyer can say that the order should not be complied with because the central bank was not joined or because the Supreme Court has no authority on monetary policy. Who says that, by the way?
Isn't that what...
Is the Supreme Court discussing monetary policy? No. Some state governments have approached the Supreme Court to the effect that by virtue of Section 19 of the Central Bank Act, the board of the bank shall submit a proposal to the president for issuance of new notes. So the bank cannot do it alone. So if the president approved the issuance of new notes, and the president himself has come out to say, the governor came to me, governor of the Central Bank, with a proposal to change the color of the Naira, what you call redesign, and I approved it because we want to stop demonetization of politics. That's what the president said. Forget what the Central Bank is now saying. The president said, we do not want money backs to make a mockery of the democratic process. Good enough. Furthermore, it was the president that extended the deadline of January 31st. He told the governor, give me 7 more days. Furthermore, the president summoned a meeting the APC governors met with the president where he said, I need 7 days. Now it's 10 days. He also summoned a meeting of the chair of the Nigerian Governors Forum, the chair of APC
Progressive Governors
Forum, APC and the rest of them. And furthermore, the president summoned a meeting of the Council of State for advice on what to do on this matter. These are not the actions of the Central Bank, but those actions of the president. So if the president is now being challenged on the ground that unwarranted suffering has been unleashed on the people, and you are saying the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction,
can they
I beg your pardon. Now, the cases being cited by some of my colleagues are totally irrelevant. In the case of Attorney General of Lagos and Attorney General of the Federation, the Supreme Court assumed jurisdiction on the ground that the order, the directive, told the Minister of Finance to seize the funds of the local governments in Lagos was given by the President. An action of the federal government.
But the thing about this is that even if the lawyers have a perspective, I think last time we checked it, it's not a pronouncement of court. It is that of the court that subsists.
Of course.
So their opinion can be the opinion.
No, it's their personal opinions.
Now, even if, secondly...
the order is set aside.
Yeah.
It's binding on everybody.
So secondly, does the CBN have to direct banks to accept this? Well, since the court decision is already there.
Yes. Because the Central Bank has fixed, and the President have fixed 10th of February, and there was confusion. In fact, a statement was sent out, not credited to anybody, that the Central Bank will not comply with the order. So you would have expected the Central Bank to come out forcefully to deny, just like they are denying whether they have facilities to print money.
So,
I'm just a little curious. Can the central bank say that, because we also saw that yesterday there was a meeting between the president and the central bank governor.
Yeah.
Can they say that they awaited a directive from the president, given that it is the president who is being sued here? It is the president, or it is the federal government who is being sued. It is the president who has convened a Council of State meeting. It is the president who has taken all of these actions. And since it was the president and the central bank governor that had the initial meeting, where the decision was taken for the redesign of the Naira, can they argue that, well, we're still waiting for the outcome of what the president will say?
Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami, on Friday last week, on the 10th, while everybody was confused, came out to say the government is going to comply with the order of the Supreme Court. And the government in this case includes the central bank. Because if you look at section 318 of the Constitution, it defines government to include officials of the government. And there are cases where the central bank has been said to be an agency of the federal government.
If that is the case, then should we really be waiting for another clarification? Some people will say then
unnecessary.
That should answer
it. It's unnecessary. If we want to embrace the rule of law, you don't need to make any clarification. But I said the central bank ought to have done that because of the statement allegedly credited to it.
So if that statement, that as it was made by the Attorney General, and then people are waiting for meetings, maybe for the president to say something, if that is unnecessary, so why all this confusion then?
You see, the president gave us 7 days.
To decide what he wants to do.
It's 10 days now. And everybody is confused. And that shouldn't happen in a country where there is proper governance. It shouldn't happen. Leave people guessing on a matter that has almost completely collapsed the economy. No. You put your money in your bank, in the bank, as directed by the central bank. Go and drop all the old notes. When you drop the old notes, you will collect new currency notes. You cannot collect them because the banks have no money. And unfortunately, the central bank appears to have incited the public against the banks. Because people now troop to the banks. Or the banks initially said, go to your ATM machines. How many people have access to ATM machines in the country? Just like e-banking they are talking about. Oh, we have alternatives. Go and engage in e-banking or mobile banking. How many Nigerians? Why? In Nigeria, you have an elite, a group that is so arrogant. We just substitute ourselves for the people. So because you are in Abuja, network, you can get network occasionally to send money. You believe everybody in Nigeria does that. Do you know that in many of the states today, banks only operate in the state capital because of insecurity? And in some of those states, you may have to travel 300, 500 kilometers before you can get to the capital of the state. So we just disregard the demands of such citizens. And you're talking of e-banking.
Yeah, but what do we also make of those who say that there are those who have tried to frustrate this policy? That the central bank, I think the central bank has also made an allusion to that. That there are those who, in spite of the fact that, yes, they've distributed not so much, they don't want to distribute as much money as they collected from the economy. That's the grand idea behind this. Not that they don't have. I think it's deliberately. They've deliberately, refused to print as much as they have collected. And it's for a reason, because they want more people to migrate to the online platforms.
Within 100 days?
Yeah, but
for 223 million people?
But don't you think that they would have calculated? They would have calculated.
No, they didn't calculate anything.
Just a moment. What perhaps our Naira needs are for a day at a time, maybe for a month, and to say this one should be enough for the people at this particular point in time.
No, Makwe, unfortunately, this program was not thought out. Many Nigerians embraced the policy. Many Nigerians embraced the policy for the purpose of the election. Many Nigerians who had lost faith in the system, whereby we are shamed, we are disgraced as a people, whereby you cast your vote, which is supposed to be a secret, etc. You have to show it to somebody who would then give you money. It was so shameful, so disgraceful. So when they came out with this policy, forget all the other excuses. People say, oh, this is a good one. But it was not well thought out. No, there was no committee to find out, to learn from what happened to Nigeria in 1984, when the Buhari military junta changed the color of the Naira and gave Nigeria only 2 weeks. At that time, the population was 81 million people.
And there were no online platforms there?
Online platform. Nothing like that. And many people died, committed suicide, because they couldn't get their money. They couldn't get their money. Legitimately earned. But please, don't use the excuse of, because when you say, oh, the central bank has a plan to reduce money, that goes out there, we don't want people to sabotage. This, for me.
No, the thing is, they have, just a moment,
who have sabotaged?
Some people say that they have accused the banks of sabotage, because the people who they do not want to get this
How
money,
much have you given
politicians
to each bank? We have challenged the central bank.
Yeah.
Let the public know how much you have released to each bank, so that we can also ask them, can you justify what you did with the money? But if you run the country on the basis of opacity, secrecy, you just leave people guessing. And allegations and counter-allegations have been made. Banks are under threat. Some have had to close down because of the safety of their staff.
What do you make of state governors who, because, having met with the president, and then much later we hear Kano, Niger, I think Kano shut down some supermarkets that were not accept, they were rejecting old notes. Niger, almost in the same scenario. What do you make of this?
The country is run as if we are under a military dictatorship. For goodness sake, where have those governors got the power to close down markets? Is there a court order? This is a country that is supposed to be governed under the rule of law. You can't just wake up and say, oh, I don't like what a few people have done, so I'm going to punish everybody who goes to a market. I beg your pardon. These governors, we should appeal to these governors.
Well, how about
say that this country has to be operated in accordance with the law?
How about states that have said, look, security agencies arrest anyone who rejects the old notes? Is that lawful?
You see, again, if you are disobeying the orders of court, there's a procedure for enforcing the judgments and orders of court. Nobody is allowed to take the law into his hands. Nobody. 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 But once people just, it's like, a governor says, oh, you can't hold a political rally in my state. For goodness, where have you got the power? Or central bank now giving guidelines on election. Under what law? I've looked at the Electoral Act. The central bank is not mentioned at all. But you are now bringing out guidelines for the election. So there are problems. Confusion all over the place.
Let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Mr. Falana, good to see you again. There's this conversation that, of course, along the lines of the same thing you're talking about. The law, the constitution of the country says, in section 287 sub 1 of the 1999 constitution, says the decisions of the Supreme Court shall be enforced in any part of the federation by all authorities and persons, and by courts with subordinate jurisdiction to that of the Supreme Court. Now, this is the position of the Constitution. Now, I do not believe that the central bank is unaware of this. What I'm just wondering is, this is the situation. The Supreme Court has made a ruling. Although it would seem that because there is no timeline to it, the AGF could say, the federal government will abide by the ruling of the Constitution, of the Supreme Court. What now? It's been how many days after now? Situation is getting worse for many people, but above all, the rule of law hasn't taken full effect according to Section 287 sub 1 of the 1999 Constitution. What are the consequences, and who has the authority to enforce the consequences?
The plaintiffs will have to take appropriate steps under the law, because Nigerians fail to realize that we're in trouble when this regime did make the point in, I think, 2018, that certain court orders will not be obeyed on grounds of national security. And I think what they are doing this time again is to say, because of our monetary policy, we are not going to obey the order of the court. But as I did say earlier, this time around, the government created an exception. And that was when the Attorney General of the Federation came out last Friday to say that the government will comply with the order. It couldn't have been otherwise. That is in line with the tenets of the rule of law. No government department, no agency of the government can act otherwise.
But Mr. Falana, the question then is, what's the timeline? I mean, as I said, it's been a few days.
The order took immediate effect. The order took immediate effect the moment it was issued on Wednesday last week. So that's the timeline. And until it is set aside by that court, it is binding on all authorities and persons in Nigeria.
It goes back to the same question that I asked Mr. Falana. Now that it has not been effected, it has not been complied with, what are the consequences of that? And who should enforce that?
The law will be invoked to deal with those who are deliberately flouting the orders of the court and sabotaging the rule of law in Nigeria. And for me, an example has to be made this time around, so that nobody will feel that it's above the law in our country. And like the late Lord Denny once said in England, no matter how high you are, the law is higher than you.
Good morning, Mr. Falana. I'm wondering also about the governor's suit, to the Supreme Court. 3 governors and some other governors have joined the suit. Some are saying that if the governors are so concerned, about the Naira palaver, that shouldn't they demonstrate the same sense of responsibility in other matters, like education, for instance?
Well, that is neither here nor there. Because we're not even talking of education. There are 2 issues now that are bothering Nigerians. Fuel scarcity, Naira scarcity. The governors have chosen their own battle. That's the one that concerns them. They don't bother about whether you have fuel available, whether fuel is available in Nigeria, or whether it's sold, at 5,000 naira per litre. That's not their business. Their business is money. So it's for Nigerians to also pick up the battle in other areas, But we are not going to say, because the governors didn't protest when ASUU had a strike, or because the governors are not even protesting now over fuel scarcity, we are therefore going to say, we are not going to really be worried over a lack of access to one's money in the banks.
Also,
Nigerians have to take care of the situation. And I think Nigerians are being made to be aware that governors have their own agenda, while members of the public have their own complaints.
Also, Mr. Falana, if the CBN can rely on, the point that is being argued that it wasn't joined or not named in the suit filed by the governors, the Council of State has met and issued an advisory. So the question now is, what is the weight of that advisory, and to what extent is it binding on the Apex Bank, to comply with? Because the CBN governor was present at that meeting.
the CBN governor was present to brief the body. It's not a member of to brief the body, i.e., we have challenges, please bear with us. And they say, you know, gentlemen, what the country should do is, since you do not have enough money, you haven't printed enough money, allow the old and the new notes to be legal tender. And what is the problem with that? You still can enforce your restriction. In other words, nobody can collect more than 100,000 naira, which has now been changed to 20,000 naira. You will still make your point. But this business of punishing the entirety of a people for the alleged offense of a few should not be accepted in Nigeria. A few years ago, the government said, oh, we are going to increase the pump price of petroleum products because criminals were smuggling the product. Why should I be punished? Because some people are using money to win elections. Now, mind you, we have 23 million people. I can predict that less than 40 million people will vote in this election. So why should everybody suffer? Because you want to deny some people access to fund. Again, for me, it confirms the collapse of the security architecture of the state. If you cannot mobilize the security forces to arrest and prosecute those who entice people with money on the day of election. Mind you, every polling unit, every police station will have a policeman at least, civil defense people, some of them even soldiers, EFCC and others. And if all of them cannot arrest criminal elements, please, you have no business punishing the entirety of Nigerians.
Well, Mr. Falana, could you explain to us Section 287(1) of the Constitution, where it says the decisions of the Supreme Court shall be enforced in any part of the Federation by all authorities and persons and by courts with subordinate jurisdiction to that of the Supreme Court? Doesn't it mean that citizens can arrest anyone who is resisting to collect?
No, it's not about arresting. What that law is saying is that all authorities and persons in Nigeria shall enforce, including the central bank, including the president, including the attorney general, and all of them, that we have been enjoined by the Constitution to enforce all the authorities, I mean, the orders and judgments of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, you know, you are.
So if they fail to do that, the law will have to be invoked. No, the law will have, it's contempt of court.
You asked the last time about where Katumbi told you about how the Kano State government shut down a supermarket.
No, I said it's not right.
Yes. Isn't that at the same time trying to enforce what it is that the Supreme Court has said?
No, again, you have to follow the law to enforce. You have to follow the law. You cannot breach the law in enforcing the judgment of the court. The court has not said go and close down a market. Because that is collective punishment. There are people in that market, supermarket, who are not involved, you know, in the alleged offense.
A supermarket is owned by an individual, and it will be the individual's instructions that the employees will follow.
Well, you know, but I'm saying that the governor will have taken an action in court.
In furtherance of the Supreme Court's order?
Yes. So what about what we are assuming that this was correct, that some states maybe are now trading in CFA?
That's going on now. That's going on in Nigeria.
It's going on now?
Some are also trading in dollars. You are aware of that. Even in Abuja, yeah. Yes.
But
and I, as a central bank, if you want to demonetize this process, ask everybody who has dollars in their home to put the money in their domiciliary account. The central bank pretended he didn't hear that. I have had to sue the central bank. You cannot allow the dollarization of the economy. They're not worried.
Do they have jurisdiction over that? It's not their currency, is it?
No, the only legal tender in Nigeria is Naira and Kobo.
Indeed. So if people have other currencies, aren't they allowed to?
They are not allowed to collect rents in dollars, school fees in dollars in some schools in Nigeria. You are not aware.
Yes,
the central bank is aware.
But
and the central bank is under a duty under the central bank
that is true.
to arrest such people.
The point
and
is,
prosecute them.
Can they tell people who have it? Because they can say we're not using it, we use it only when we travel. Can the central bank mandate people to take such dollars and go and keep it in the bank?
By landlords that I want to collect dollars. There are schools in Abuja here, in Lagos and other places where students pay school fees in dollars. The central bank is aware.
Well, what a scenario we've got on our hands, but of course we'd like to hear from you what you think of this matter, because it's clearly not the last we'll get on this subject matter in the country. But we have to thank you very much indeed for coming on this morning. Mr. Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Okay.
We will be back in just a moment. Don't go away.